Hi, everyone, and welcome to the May instalment of our 2023 RWTA Australian Cold Chain podcast series, where we discuss all manner of topics that affect our temperature-controlled industry. My name's Marianne Kinsella, and I'm the Executive Officer of the RWTA. Today, I am speaking with Liz Tully, the founder and owner of Mental Wealth at Work. Hi, Liz.
Hi, Marianne.
Thanks for making time to speak with me today, Liz. You're a familiar face with the RWTA members already, and you've been working with us for a few years. Going back a bit, you were part of a well-attended mental health roadshow that went around Australia to discuss the importance of mental health in the workplace. You're presently holding online and face-to-face sessions, which have been really popular. But what else are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. That does seem like a long time ago, but I think it was only 2021 that we did the roadshow. So, yeah, I'm still continuing on with my mental health first aid training. So, for anyone who's not familiar with that training, it's a accredited evidence-based program. So, just in the same way as your workplace would have a first aid officer, mental health first aid really looks at mental health in the way that we're looking at spotting the signs and symptoms of common mental health conditions. And then it's really about how to have a mental health conversation. And then more importantly, it's really where to direct a person to get appropriate professional help if they are perhaps struggling with a mental health condition. So in a nutshell, that's what the very popular mental health first aid program is. But in addition to that, I'm doing a lot of other training in terms of still around the topic of mental health awareness. But I've got a couple of other workshops which I've developed around resilience, so building resilience, positive psychology. A very popular topic at the moment is about how to get better sleep. I don't know about you, but I think we can all benefit from how to get better sleep. So I've developed a range of what I call wellbeing workshops to deliver either face-to-face, online to different businesses.
Right. Yeah, the sleep one I'm in. Boots
Yes,
and all. That sounds
sold.
like a great idea. Sold. What other sorts of things do you feel would be really applicable to the Australian cold chain, particularly? We've got 87% of our membership are fellas. Do you have anything that is specific to them that you'd like to talk about?
I do. So I guess I've got two things which I will talk about. So you're absolutely right with your industry. Unfortunately, it is one of the it ranks one of the poorest in the indices of mental health. So, unfortunately, your industry doesn't really fare well when it comes to mental health. So a couple of things that I would recommend. So I guess the first one would be I have a general mental health awareness program. So many businesses will do the mental health first aid program with me, which is great, but it is a little time intensive. So the program takes about 12 hours to complete. So what I've found is that many of your members or other clients that I have really enjoy the content, but just don't have the time to take a big group or a number of people through mental health first aid. So I've got almost like a condensed version, which is, I call it a general mental health awareness session. Again, I can run it online or in person, and it's about an hour session. And what I cover off in that session is really sort of talking a bit more around mental health awareness. So, as is very well publicised, that 1 in 5 Australians actually will experience a mental health condition within a 12-month period. So it's very common for workforces to have, at least 20% of their people suffering from a mental health condition. So the workshop I do talks a little bit more around that, talks a little bit more around the resources that are available. So I think in the last few years, we've certainly come a long way in terms of the available resources. So I give a bit more information about those, and many of them are free and really easily accessible. So that would be one thing which I think many businesses can benefit from. And
yes,
then as you
absolutely.
Yeah. I think, in some cases, just like you don't know what you don't know. So it is just a sort of really good general awareness session. And then you also raised that really great point around your industry in particular being very heavily male dominated. So, for example, next month in June, we have Men's Health Month, or Men's Health Week, it is in June. So I'm working with a couple of clients who've engaged me to do a men's mental health session. So what I do in that session, again, it's about a 45-minute to an hour session, and I do a bit more of a deep dive into men's mental health in particular. So what I talk there about is some of the statistics around mental health, in particularly for men, and then also some tips around, how to engage either your mates or, the men in your life who may be suffering from or maybe experience a mental health condition, and just some small tips in terms of the nuances between having a mental health conversation with a male, maybe a little bit different as to how you'd have a mental health conversation with a female. And then again, I talk a lot about the different resources that are available. So, for
Yeah.
example, what a lot of the research talks about is that 65% of people with a common mental health condition actually don't seek appropriate professional help. So, yeah, 2/3 of people with a mental illness don't actually seek appropriate professional help. So, what I sort of dive a bit more into is why is that, an understanding, if we can start to understand what some of the barriers are that men in particular face by not seeking help, and then coming up with some of the sort of solutions or some of the options that we can provide people, just sort of to make those barriers a little easier to come across.
That's that's amazing. Number one, thank you for being a member of the RWTA and being so utterly valuable to the membership. One question that I will ask you, and I think back in 2021, we discussed briefly, we're talking about individuals here and we're talking about the people that you work with, but for a company, does it save them money to invest in mental health training and looking after their people? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about that side of it and what sort of dollars would be saved?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So there was a PricewaterhouseCoopers, so PwC report that showed that for every dollar invested in mental health initiatives, so such as mental health first aid training or other mental health awareness training, so for every dollar invested, it's at least a $2.30 return on investment. So that's across general industries, and in some industries in particular. So when you think about sort of heavy industry, it can be as much as a $7 return on investment. So economically, it absolutely makes sense to invest in mental health training. And then I guess, and from a more of a compliance perspective, the legislation has, depending on which state you're in, but the legislation has recently changed, for example, in Queensland. So employers have always had a responsibility to maintain a safe work environment. So, environment free from slips, trips, falls, and other hazards. So many of your members will be really familiar with doing things like risk assessments on, physical hazards. But the legislation has recently changed, as I say, in Queensland from the 1st of April, and that includes psychosocial hazards. So you'll see and hear a lot more from people like myself, but in general around psychosocial risk assessments and psychosocial hazards within the workplace, because an employer not only has like a moral obligation, but now absolutely has a legal obligation to make sure that they're identifying and taking steps to overcome those psychosocial hazards.
That is a great point to make, because I think it's important to feel great at work. If you're feeling well, you want to go to work. You feel happy. It emphasises good working practice for everyone. But also, I think, thanks for telling us a little bit about how it affects the company itself as well, because it's a great investment. And I encourage everyone to get in touch with Liz or myself. Please let me know if we can help you at all, because the training that Liz is doing has been very well accepted and participated in. And if you haven't done it, give us a yell and we'll put you in touch. Thank you, Liz, so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
True pleasure.